We are live. We have a great presentation today. We have Lee Nordbye. He's joining us shortly here. And we are live on YouTube as well as an in-person audience, which we're really happy to have because we haven't had that for a couple of years. So starting to bring those back, which is really good. So part of what I like about doing a live stream is the interaction with everybody online. So we will be fielding questions online and giving them to Lee at the end of the presentation. So make sure you interact with us, send us the information, sort of the questions that you want, and we'll certainly get to them throughout the day, the presentation, and at the end of it as well. And then the in-person audience will do some questions after the live stream is done. So make sure you do that. But Lee is here, and he's already making a running for the most interesting man in the world, I think, here. Yeah. You know, I just met the guy, and I'm like, oh, geez, just don't stop talking, man. This is great. So Lee's thirst for adventure, exploration, and capturing the bold stories of the mountains and roads less traveled is never ending. Lee's enjoyment of the outdoors began as a kid when his parents took him camping, exploring the wilds of northern Alberta, or hiking in the Rockies. Lee's passion for photography started with a Kodak Instamatic. How old are you, man? It was given to him by his dad. Like so many of us have got our starts like that, which our parents are passing forward that passion. So fast forward to 2015 when Lee got a fire in his belly to study the art of photography while standing under the northern lights at -50 in the Northwest Territories. 2017, Lee decided to pursue a passion as a career when he started his own photography business, and there's been no looking back since. So we're thrilled to have him on stage today. So Lee, pleasure to meet you.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Come on in.
Hey, everyone on live and here in person.
All right, so get to it, and I can't wait to hear what you got to talk about.
Thanks very much. Hey, this is the first time I've done a live stream talk, so bear with me. I'll try to engage everyone as much as I can. and yourselves as well. So this is a peek into my mountain adventures and a few misadventures. As Dave mentioned, I have a passion for photography, but it really stems from exploring the outdoors. I'll get a bit into it a bit more, but it started off in my childhood. So I'll briefly expand on introduction to myself. We'll jump right into the meat and potatoes of the presentation. I have a short video and questions, as Dave mentioned. If in person, if you have a question on a specific slide or story, feel free to pop your hand up and I'll address it then, or you can wait till the end. It doesn't matter to me. So let's begin with who I am. First and foremost, I'm a father and a husband to this wonderful family. This is us on South Buller Pass a few years ago. As you can tell, it was quite windy. That's my wife in the far right, left. And then my son's Devin beside my wife, and my son Kieran. We love to get out in the outdoors. I'm going to talk a lot more about this. I'm an adventurer. We're actually heading into my favorite time of year in the Rockies. The two favorite activities are wild ice skating and exploring for it in ice caves. And I'll talk a bit about that more in the presentation. And then myself as an artist, my dad inspired me, as mentioned, and then I stood on that cold tundra. I don't know how fire and cold don't get to go together, but somehow I got a fire in the belly to become a student of the art of photography. And later that year, actually, I was attending a portrait workshop, black and white portrait workshop by Dave Brosha, who was here earlier. And it gave me inspiration to explore the world of landscapes in black and white. Many of my images are, pretty much all of them, but two, I think, are all in black and white. And it comes from inspiration from a portrait workshop I attended in 2015. This photo is by my great friend Amy Liu, taken at the top of Westwind Pass. I am also, for those that know me online and Facebook, I am a lover of bad dad jokes. So, oops, geez, what are we doing here? Geez, my control, see, here we go, my control of this, sorry, I apologize, there we go. My apologies. I'm a lover of bad dad jokes. This is my son, and we're in Hawaii a few years ago. That's my son swimming, and that a seal decided to photobomb him, but gave his seal approval to swim. Yeah, so we're going to jump into my adventure and misadventure stories. I describe my time in the mountains, whether it's by car, hiking, or going up to the summit of a mountain, as mountain therapy days. I am challenged by mental health. I do suffer from depression and a lot of anxiety at times. And I find among many things, the biggest thing for me to help me manage that is getting in the outdoors and challenging myself beyond my limits safely to explore that region with friends and family. And so, and there's no better couch than the outdoors. And so I call my mountain therapy days. We'll walk through stories of the Canadian Rockies primarily, but I also spent 7 days trekking in Bhutan this past May, and I have a few stories from there. So we'll jump right in. And I'm going to tell it, I'm going to try to be a bit of a storyteller through this, as opposed to the detailed technical side of things. So we'll start off with the gear. Was on the road like a bomb went off as we were getting ready for our adventure on Dome Glacier. As we were packing up our gear, the excitement level was building, and once the gear was packed, we set off on our adventure. And not long after that, boom! Off in the distance, a serac avalanched off the side of the mountain that we were about to head up towards. It was an amazing sight to behold. It was way off in the distance, so we were nowhere near the danger of it. To see these thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of pounds of ice coming down the mountain. We then proceeded up the left. When you go exploring for ice caves, it's usually at the toe of the glacier or on the sides of the glacier. We set up on the left side of the glacier. Unfortunately, we didn't find anything at that time, but we got to the head of it was a tiered glacier. We got the head. We stayed safely away from the mountain and decided to bask in the sun and eat some lunch and rest before we headed back. And after enjoying the succulent power bars and jam sandwiches, we decided to head down the right side of the glacier, the right side of the moraine, when we came upon this massive, massive snow structure. And we actually had to crawl under it to continue on. And believe it or not, this was probably 10 feet high. You know, there's enough room underneath for us to squeeze through. And so when I squeezed through it, I looked and turned around and saw the wonderful contours, shapes, textures of this sculpture that created by nature. And so I had to capture that moment. And that's what this is this massive, massive snow structure trapped between two chunks of glacial ice. And just a photo tip for everyone, that black is actually the blue sky. If you're out and about on a bluebird day in Alberta and you want to shoot in black and white, if you polarize to that ungodly blue and then throw it in black and white, it almost turns the sky black right away. So that's exactly what I did in this case. And so once we were done, we headed back down to the cars, and I had this wonderful photo that ends up actually being published in the Canadian Rockies Annual when it was still going. The next one is a hot spring summer day. We started off in K Country along the Spray Lakes Road. We were dressed in shorts and t-shirts. End of May-ish, it was like plus 25. And as we advanced up to my favorite hike, Sparrowhawk Tarns. One of my favorite hikes in Kananaskis. And actually, normally when you get to the first tarn, there's luscious green meadows. And if you're there in July, it's beautiful, beautiful wildflowers. Well, when we got there on this day, spring quite hadn't sprung. We were walking actually in places up to waist deep snow. And so our objective of getting to the second and third tarn, which are several hundred meters above us at this point, had to be put aside. So we stuck around the first tarn and took several photos. We played around with portraits of each other. And once I was done that, I looked across the tarn up Mount Sparrowhawk along the ski slope, and I found this fascinating structure sculpted by nature and how the snow melted. And the trees are in a perfect spot. So I grabbed my long lens and captured it. And I've got a series of photos that I'm calling, instead of doing the old ink blot tests, ink blot, you've got the snow sculpture tests. So I've asked people what this looks like. The most popular is the Star Trek emblem. The bird is another one, jet stream. It comes out. I don't know what it looks like to you guys, but that's the most popular that I've received. So my wife and I chose to, for the very first time during COVID, to go into Mount Assiniboine Provincial Park and stay at the lodge. And the very first morning, being the ambitious, adventurous photographer that I am, I decided to get up well before sunrise to get up to the top of the nublet to capture the golden larch in the golden sunlight. And so I'm walking in the dark, singing at the top of my lungs so that the Mr. or Mrs. Bruin, I don't come across them. And I'm starting to realize that my goal may not be achieved on this day. It's very, very cloudy. And as the light appears, I start to walk into pillow-like clouds and get to a point where I can't even see 10 feet in front of me. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know this area. I better not take the risk. And so I headed back to the warmth of the lodge to grab a scrumptious breakfast, a warm coffee to help keep me awake from the early hours that I woke up. And so the next day, Kim and I got up, and it was a reversal. It was a beautiful day. We headed back up towards the nublet. At one point, Kim decided to rest. There's an iconic viewpoint where you see Mount Assiniboine and all the 3 lakes. You often see the photograph. She decided to stay there and read her book while I went up to the top of the nublet, which was my first solo summit, actually. And on the way up, I looked behind me and fell in love with the mood and the ominous clouds that were encircling Mount Assiniboine, or known as the Matterhorn of the Rockies. And so I grabbed my long lens and had to capture this moment in time because I just fell in love with the mood that was coming off those clouds, which they swirled through the whole time that we were there. And then I made my way down and we adventured on for the rest of the day. Lost Falls. John will love this. So there's a group of us separated by over 100 kilometers. We live at different stages of our lives, have different experiences, but we share 2 things in common. We share a passion for photography. We share a passion for the mountains. And periodically we come together at our favorite coffee house in Canmore, give each other welcoming hugs, grab our brew, and go on what has affectionately become known as photo buddy outings. And on this day, there's a group of 6 of us. On this day, it was half of us that could make the trip. And so our goal was Edworthy Falls. Not Edworthy Falls, for those that know Edworthy Falls. And we make our way to where we have to actually venture into the forest. And as we're walking through the forest, we come to a junction. Go left or go right? Well, I can assure you we didn't make the right decision when we went right. And we ended up in a lost creek. Well, we called it Lost Creek. We weren't really lost. With Lost Falls. And we bushwhacked our way down into the creek. And I decided to jump into the creek and use the creek as a line and capture the falls. And soon after I got into the creek, I realized my boots weren't as waterproof as I thought they were. Fortunately, it wasn't too bad, but I still got a boot full of water. I worked on that image for a long time and got extremely frustrated and decided it wasn't working. So I left. So I got closer, as my buddy John would say, get closer if not working for you. And so I got closer, I laid down on the ground and I was able to capture this shot of the falls, which I loved. And it's now called Lost Falls. We actually ended up following the creek and making it to Edworthy Falls, to which there's another story that I'll tell over coffee, glass of wine. It involved some not so friendly people. The bow. For my whole life, I've explored the Icefield Parkway from a car. And I've tried to get, a friend of mine and I tried to get up Cirque Peak one year and we couldn't make it because of the weather. So on this day, on our second attempt, we decided to go up Cirque Peak again. And when we jumped out of the truck, it was beautiful blue skies, white fluffy clouds. And so we thought, hey, great day. So off we went, made it to Helen Lake, which is at the base of Cirque Peak. In record time, or at least record time for me, I was hiking with my buddy Chris, who is a billy goat and walks very fast. And so we make it there, we have a rest, we eat our power bars, get rested up before we make it up Cirque Peak. And actually Cirque Peak is quite a pleasant hike up. It's steep, but it's well marked. The trail is very well embedded and there's no hands-on work. And so partway up, we both look to the left and both of us fall in love with the ridge that comes off Cirque Peak in the foreground and how it frames Bow Glacier, which turns into Bow Glacier Falls, Iceberg Lake, and it's called Iceberg Lake because in the spring especially, big chunks of ice from the glacier end up floating in that lake like icebergs. And then Bow Glacier Falls again. And so we grabbed our long lenses again, and that grabbing my long lens is you'll hear that a lot. That's my favorite lens. And we captured this moment. And again, I love the moodiness and the deep contrast that was provided by that. We end up making it to the top. We capture a few images. And on the way down, we hit the tree line, and that blue, fluffy cloud day turns nasty. And fortunately, we had our rain gear. We quickly put that on, and despite getting deluge of rain and wind, we make it back to the car safe and sound, and in record time to go back and visit with family and friends that day. Cliffhanger. So all the adventures that I do in the Rockies, the starting point is driving to the trailhead. And it's usually on a paved road, and because you can't off-road in the mountains. Well, on this day, we went off-roading, and it was a completely different experience for me. It was a mind bender. We went into the Ghost River area, which is west of town, a popular ice climbing area. My buddy and I, because we wanted to go up Black Rock Mountain, which is one of the, arguably, I think, the most easternmost mountain, at least in southern Rockies, and we decided to go up to it. It's an old fire lookout, too. And we had to drive into the Ghost, along the Ghost River, and park my vehicle, a truck at the time, in the middle of nowhere with a backdrop of the mountains. And it was a real mind bender for me because I've never done this before, and I continually look back and I'm like, this just doesn't make sense. I'm like in the twilight zone. But we make our way up the mountain. The night before, 2 nights before, major snowfall. Wet snow going up, not the most friendly of things to do. It was probably between our ankle and our knees, deep at points. A lot of effort, especially for me. So it took us 5 hours. That same wet snow, biggest friend coming down. Biggest friend. Dig your heels in, sit down like you're sitting on the john, and away you go. Right? Gravity, let gravity take hold. Less than 2 hours down. So it was a lot of fun coming down. But when we're at the top, it's an old fire lookout. And so we're grabbing our photos and whatnot, and nature calls just before we head down. So I'm, doing my thing, and I look down, and the scene is unfolding. I'm like, wow, that is a super cool scene. And so I grab a few iPhone shots to see what it would look like. That's a typical thing I'll do. iPhone is really easy to grab and do test shots with, just to see if it's going to work, especially if it's wide angle or zoom. And so I'm doing that. I run back into the old lookout, and I go to my buddy Paul. Do you mind if we hold on for like 5 minutes? I got to grab the shot. He said, absolutely. And out the door I went, and I grabbed Cliffhanger on the way down. So you never know when you're going to be inspired, including nature calls. The Front Range. My very first winter summit. It's along it's Mount Michener along Abraham Lake. And actually, it is probably the best time to go up Mount Michener. It's wind swept, so the risk of avalanche is very little. And the only way to access it is to cross the lake. We had hoped to cross that lake on skates that day, just an added element. We love to skate on wild ice. Unfortunately, it was snow covered, so we had to walk across. But that's the reason it's accessible in the winter, is because you have to cross the lake. Should you cross the lake in the summer, you can do it by kayak or canoe, but then you take a severe risk that you're going to run into wind later that day and have to navigate across that very windy lake. And so it's generally ascented in the winter. So we're driving along, and I'm super excited for my first winter summit. We get to the the ditch, and cross the lake. And the first hour to 90 minutes is bushwhacking through the forest uphill in snow. And so I overheat just thinking about exercise. So I'm like roasting by the time we break through the forest and onto the ridge. You know, the sweat is literally running off me like a river. And so, but we make it up the ridge to our next major obstacle, which is a scree slope. For those that summit mountains, you'll know what I mean. Scree is not, again, it's not a great friend to you going up. On the way down, it can be a blast. And it's the typical 2 steps up, 1 step back. And we finally make it to the top of the scree slope. And all of a sudden, my friends, Paul, Chris, and Lizzie break out in huge excitement. And I look to the left, and down in the valley is broken specter. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it's low-lying cloud. The conditions line up like the stars, and the timing is perfect. Low-lying cloud, sun is behind you, and your shadow is casted onto these clouds. There's a bit of a rainbow that forms because the water pellets in the cloud cause a rainbow. And this is going off. You have to get up early and get up high to have this occur and have the conditions line up. So this is an extremely rare occurrence. And all I can think about is sitting down because I'm cramping up severely. My legs are like on fire. And all I can think about is just sitting down, eating chocolate, nuts, oranges, drinking water while these guys are running around like chickens with their head chopped off. Right? I couldn't care what's going on. And then at some point during that event, I'm like, I give up. I'm done. I'm not going to go on. My legs can't bear it anymore. Fortunately, by the time I had eaten a bunch of food, guzzled a bunch of water, the whole event had taken place. They grabbed their snack. I was re-energized, and on I went. And we made it up to the top. And on the way up to the top, we could see the wind just howling, and snow coming off the top. So we thought we were going to get wind blasted when we got up to the top. Get up to the top, perfectly calm. So we spent an hour on the summit. And during that time, the sun peeked through the clouds perfectly and cast this wonderful light. That's the ridge, the eastern ridge of Mount Michener in the foreground, and then the front range in the background. And I just fell in love with the contrast of that light. And on this day, I had to improvise with my 24-70, because it's the only, on big days, I only bring one lens and a camera body. And so 24-70, and I captured that image, because I just fell in love with the contrast of the light and made it. And on our way down, we had a bit of fun playing snowball baseball. Grit. I just recently took up mountaineering 2 years ago. And so I hired a guide to go up. The main objective was Mount Athabasca, and I'll talk about that in a second. But the day before, we decided to go up Boundary Peak. And to get up Boundary Peak, there's 2 routes. There's the mountaineering route, and then there's the hiking, scrambling route. And so we chose to go up the mountaineering route. And to get up the mountaineering route, you have to ice climb up the face of Little Athabasca Glacier. And it's about 2 to 3 pitches, so 2 to 3 stages up. I think it's 3. And on this day, I think I was on the 2nd pitch, and Martin, my guide, was up. And all of us, I'm listening to the ice crunch under my crampons and my ice axe. And next thing I know, I'm sliding down the ice face on my belly. And I go for about 10 feet and jerk. The rope and the system kick in, and fortunately I don't go over the edge. I get up, not even thinking. Like, I just get up, I finish climbing up, I get up to Martin, and he goes, "How you doing?" I go, great. We have a laugh and move on. And as we progress up to the ridge, we get off the glacier and going up the ridge to the final peak, I fall in love with the rock that's along the edge. It reminds me of if you've ever been to Scotland or the UK and they've got the rock fences, right? That's what it reminded me of, right? And so I kept an eye out for a scene, and I just fell in love with the grittiness of the rock, the opening, the glacier, the snow-covered part of the glacier, boundary glacier, and then the glacier itself. And so that's the reason I captured this shot. And fortunately, we didn't have to go down the same mountaineering route. We went down the scrambled route, and so I didn't have to endure sliding anymore. Oh, my first color image, lost. Not the show, although it felt like it at times. This is my buddy Chris. So this time of year, starting about now, we monitor the weather for those really cold snaps. No snow, and then social media, and we love to go wild ice skating on mountain lakes. Basically, just skating on mountain lakes. And so on this, around a 3 years ago, we got intel that the north end of Peyto Lake was frozen. So, and that's always been a bucket list item of mine. So Chris and I jump out. We pack all our gear in. To go in, to the north end at night. And he goes, do you know your way in? Absolutely. I know my way in. I've been in there a few times. No problem. The first 15 minutes, no problem. We get to a point where I know we have to go left, just based on my experience. So I think, okay, at night, yeah, it's roughly here. Go left. Not very long into it, after going over many snow-covered trees and getting so much snow down our back of our necks, the conclusion is, yeah, we took a wrong turn. Not to worry, though. We ended up getting on our phones and we could orient ourselves to the lake. And so I knew where we weren't lost, really, even though it says we were low. But we weren't exactly following the trail. So we bushwhacked our way again through very, very deep snow, and we get to the lake, and we quickly make our way down in anticipation of seeing the ice, and no ice. So all that effort, and we did not get to strap on the blades and go ice skating or wild ice skating at the north end of Peyto Lake. So we each grab our own image. This is of Chris, and as you can see, that's water, open water. And so we grab our images and head on back through the same route that we came. And I come up over the edge into the parking lot where the truck is, and Chris, with the biggest smile on his face, looks at me and goes, "Where's your skate?" I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" And so I put my bag down, and not the most politest of languages was spoken at the time. But then I had to laugh it off because, it was part of the day. I had lost a skate somewhere en route back to the truck. So if you're ever in the north end of Peyto Lake, hiking through the forest and you come across this random skate, it's my skate. The bird. Another wild ice skating adventure. So Abraham Lake. We make our way there. We do sunrise photos. Then we go back, we grab our skates, we grab our hockey gear, camera gear, and we strap on the blades. And our goal on this day is to traverse the 32 kilometers of Abraham Lake. And so we are. We're advancing from the south, Peacher's Point, all the way to the dam end of the lake. And partway through, we come across this very bizarre looking structure sitting on a stump. And often when I'm out, the first question that comes out of my mouth is how the heck or what the heck? Like, how the heck did this form? I've got a very curious mind of what the heck or how the heck did this form? And my conclusion on this day, my theory is if you all know, Abraham Lake is a dammed lake. They fill it up, and then over time they drop the lake. And at the point they filled it up, that stump was buried in water. The lake froze, and then they dropped the lake. And in doing so, the ice cracked off and somehow stayed sitting on top of the stump. And then over time, through wind, rain, sun, nature carved what I think is the bird. I don't know, it looks like a bird to me, a dragon maybe, but it looks like a bird to me. So then we spent some time capturing this. We actually also GPS marked this and went back and shot this at night because it was such a cool structure. I don't know, what do you guys think? Bird? Whale? Whale? Well, there you go. See, here. Okay, oh, the laser doesn't, where's my laser point? It doesn't work. Anyways, yeah, to me it's a bird that there's a bird face in there with the eye onto the right, the back of the head. Anyways, cool, whale, there you go. An ice cave adventure. So we're driving along the Icefields Parkway, and it's, I look at the temperature, it's minus 25. We get to the parking lot, I jump out, and you know those days that you can smell the cold? That's exactly the reaction I hit. I could smell the cold. It was cold, minus 25. So we grab our gear, we put on the snowshoes, we go up and over the snowbank created by the grader, and woof, down we go into snow. And we're like, uh-oh, 10 kilometers of trailblazing to get to the ice cave that we wanted to go to. And the next obstacle we hit that day is you have to cross a creek. And the creek is frozen, freshly frozen. Not knowing its stability, we have a long ice climbing screw. We screw it in, and yeah, the ice is thick enough based on our belief. But being the precautious people that we are, we each go across alone, but we try a different method. One does a crab crawl, one does a fireman crawl, and I did the ice pick crawl. We make it across safely. Actually, it's funny to see the images, the video of us crawling across a creek. And then we make it up, and then we got to go up and over. It's actually in the Saskatchewan Glacier. Back in the 50s, the US Army went back there and created a road. They went in there and did some training back there. And so they created a road. We went up and over the road. We get to the top, and there's a massive avalanche terrain. So we decided to not avoid that, go through the forest, and we decided to butt slide down, channel our inner child and go butt sliding. Down we go, and out into the moraine of Saskatchewan Glacier. We make it up, and we come across this massive, massive ice wall and snow drift, for the lack of better words. We take shelter because it's a bit breezy, and at minus 25, it doesn't take much to make it cold. And then once we're warmed up, I fall in love with this snow structure and ice wall. I just love the textures of it. And so I lay down. The only way to capture the two is to lay down on my back and put the camera up. And so I do that. I get home and I'm editing it. And again, I don't know, have this weird mind. It reminds me of Jar Jar Binks from Star Wars. If you're the snow guy, it reminds me, his lip reminds me of Jar Jar Binks. So I called it Ice Binks. Same glacier, different adventure. We arrive again at the same place. We're super excited. I am like over the moon excited. I get to combine my two favorite mountain activities, wild ice skating and an ice cave. How more awesome can it get, right? So we pack up our gear, we make it up and over again, we go through the forest, avoid the avalanche territory, and make it onto the moraine. This time, however, we are greeted by 100-kilometer-an-hour winds. And there's only one way to describe what that's like, and that's this video. So you get a sense of that was for 10K. But you know what? It was actually fun. The light was this ominous, apocalyptic type of lighting. So we spent time getting photos. And then we make it to the ice cave. Again, butt slide down into the ice cave. I put my model hat on. We all work together to get the ice surface, which is a very small ice surface, but it's kind of cool to skate in an ice cave. We get it ready for those that wanted to take the skating photos. And so I'm the model, one of the models, so I get my skates on and I skate around and I get the shots. When I'm done my modeling duties, I turn to photographer mode, and 95% of the time I'm out with buddies. If they look east, I look west. They look north, I look south, right? For shots to try to find something unique. I looked behind where we had our little camp set up with all our gear, and there was this ice urchin growing from the ceiling of the cave. Now I had to squeeze myself in there because it was very low lying without trying to destroy this ice urchin. And I had to squeeze my tripod in there. I ended up, because it was very dark by then, because we got in there quite late, I ended up using 2 headlamps to light this and captured ice urchin. And I just fell in love with the tentacles coming out of this snow structure in the back of the ice cave. Oh, time for another bad dad joke. For those that can't see it, it says, mountains are not funny, they are hill areas. That actually is, I'll talk a bit about that in a moment. That is the top of Mount Beng, and our camp was just beyond that lake, and I'll talk a bit more about that. And that's Mount Assiniboine to the right. Migration. Again, Saskatchewan Glacier and the ice cave there that's been around for several years. We arrive at the same parking lot, jump out, give each other hugs. The group that we're with is next door to us, packing up. And one of them announces, I forgot my camera. And my camera bag. And I'm like, don't worry, I got you. I jump into my back of my Explorer to pull out my bag, and guess what? I forgot my camera. One extraordinarily experienced mountain photographer and one experienced one, me. What is the likelihood that we're both on the same adventure gonna forget our camera gear? Not only did I forget my camera gear, I forgot a lot of other things because it was in my bag. Fortunately, we were able to cobble together camera gear, food, water, layers for enough of us that we ended up walking into the ice cave again. This day was particularly special. I don't know if you know Elijah Baldy. He is a former Canadian figure skater. He's a big influencer. And we were able to showcase this cave to him. And to take someone into something like what we affectionately call Big Blue, that's never seen anything like that in their whole life, is quite a pleasant and honorable experience. He is going to skate in that cave, and we're going to witness him doing his backflips and all that cool stuff. And the third thing that's cool about this day is Paul, one of the guys that's with us, is shooting for the NHL. He is going to grab the story of us going into the ice cave, grab shots of us skating in the ice cave, playing hockey in the ice cave for their social media, and to which I'm going to be a model for. Like, how cool can that be, right? So we notwithstanding the gear issue, we make our way in. Fortunately, no 100-kilometer-an-hour winds. We get in there. I do all the modeling. I help Lodge out with some stuff. And then I'm sitting there, just pondering the world. looking at the roof of the ice cave. Again, I don't know, maybe I have a fascination with birds. But the structure that's coming out from the right, the head reminds me of a bird, right? So I have to capture this. And so I grab my friend's camera and take a few shots, you know, moving around, grab it, and capture this image. And the inspiration for the title is we literally migrate on an annual basis to this cave for the last, since 2020. Chris and I first went into this cave in the August of 2020. We took Paul into that cave in December of 2020. We were able to get into it in December. We weren't able to get into it in August because it was full of ice and water. And then we've been back every year, roughly December, January timeframe. So we literally, there's a migration. Birds migrate, right? And so that's the inspiration for the title, Migration. Mount Bing, so that the shot that I showed you with the bad dad joke is looking the opposite direction. So we pull into the parking lot in the backcountry. I never heard of this before, and a buddy of mine phones me up the night before we're leaving. He goes, "You got chicken wire?" I'm like, "What the hell do you need chicken wire for?" Well, raccoons love eating rubber. So you need to put chicken wire around your tires. So we got all the chicken wire set up. There's 13 of us. We go on an annual photo outing into the backcountry. And there's 13 of us. We got our big packs on. We head in, we get camp set up, and we're cooking supper, and we realize that we've set up camp in the world's worst mosquito heaven. Like, it was awful. The only way we could eat peacefully is we did the mosquito shuffle. We literally ran around camp or walked backwards around camp to avoid them because they would come on you really quickly. So the next morning, 3 of us. The great place about this in our outings is we try to find various levels of activity for people. 3 of us decide to head out on a multi-peak adventure. So we leave early. We get down to the valley, and there's right at just after sunrise, and there's a magnificent reflection happening in the lake. So we stop and take photos. Once I'm done, a friend of mine asked me to go stand on a rock just off the shore of the lake. No problem. I have to take all my boots and socks off. I do. In doing so, we got the shot. And coming off the rock, I step into the lake. And then I come out, and there's red everywhere. I had cut myself deeply between where the big toe meets the foot. Well, that's my day done, right? Like I can't go on because it would have continued or remained open the whole day. So I bandage it up as best as I can and go back to camp, rest, eat chocolate, drink coffee, and rest for the day, because the next day, a bunch of us decided to go up Mount Bing. A much easier day, a long day, but a much easier day. And so we get up to the summit. On the way, though, there's a few shenanigans. We do snow sliding, snow skating. We skate, slide down that ice, snow on our feet, because in the middle of July, early July, there's still snow in the backcountry. And we make it up to Mount Bing, and this scene unfolds. And I grab my camera, and I've got to capture it. Like, we could see, literally, I could see Mount Temple. This is on the very western edge of the Rockies, Banff National Park, near Radium. I could see Mount Temple. I could see well into the Bugaboos. I could see that's Birdwood Mountain in K Country. Like, we could, the 100 kilometers away we could see. And so my mind was literally blown that we could see so far on such a clear day. So I had to capture something that reflected that. And this scene unfolded, and that's why I've named it Mind Blowing, because that's Mount Birdwood in K Country. To the left is Spray Lakes, it was a fascinating experience that day. And then once I've done that, I look to the left or look to my right, and the pattern of the snow intrigues me. It's like, why, you know, again, I'm a curious mind. Why did nature decide to melt the snow in this pattern, right? And it's early July and there's still a ton of snow. So I grab my friend's long lens and capture the shot. Now, I have usually pretty good mojo when it comes to naming. I didn't on this occasion, so I sent it off to a friend. It reminds me of a Jersey cow, right? I didn't want to call it that, right? So I sent it off to a friend, and she came back, Patchwork. And so I love that name. Mount Athabasca. So, so we get down from Boundary Peak. We go camp. We eat our supper. We have a 2 a.m. wake-up call the next day because we need to be on the trail by 3 a.m. We need to get up and down on the snowpack for quick, easy travel. We want to stay on top of the snowpack as much as we can, but we also want to avoid avalanche hazard, right? So we have an alpine start, 3 a.m. on the trailhead. That means getting up at 2 a.m. So 7 p.m., bedtime. Go sleep in the back of my car, wake up, the alarm goes off at 2 a.m. Not long after the alarm goes off, the car alarm is screeching. I'm like, what the hell? Did I accidentally set it off? Because the timing of it going off was exactly when I decided to get up. And did I, you know, I locked my car, I don't know, some bizarre thing. Did I accidentally set up my car alarm off? So I hit my car alarm button thinking I would turn it off. No, I turned it on. So there's two car alarms going off at 2 a.m. in a campsite full. Not a great way to win and influence friends, I can tell you that. So we sort that out because it was my guide's car alarm that actually went off. We eat breakfast and we're on the trail by 3 a.m. We make it up to the glacier in time just after sunrise. We strap on our gear and make our way up. We get to a point where we actually have to literally climb stairs up this steep snow slope. God bless these people the day before. They went up, created perfect steps for us to go up, and it froze overnight. So we had perfect steps to go up. And then we get to the last up, and I'm starting to suck wind really bad, like worse than normal. I'm like, what the hell? Why? Like, why? I don't normally do this. I'm in pretty good shape. I'm like, I walk a few feet, break, walk a few feet. I get down and I realize that I was in PEI 3 days earlier. I went from sea level to 11,000 feet in 3 days. And I'm like, okay. Fortunately, no altitude sickness, just breath. We make it up, and the benefit of getting up early and starting early stuff is we get wonderful, what I consider wonderful contrasty black and white light. That's Mount Bryce. And so I just love, again, the contrasty light and shadows that are going on. So I grab a shot and call it simply Bryce. Trifecta. This is the last Canadian Rocky story, and then we'll get into some Bhutan stories. So another situation where we land at the parking spot along the highway. It's the gear yard sale of all gear, right? Like it is spread out as far as you can see, right? On this occasion, friends had scouted out this ice cave in the summer up high across the valley and anticipated we actually may need to do some technical climbing. We don't know for sure, but we might need to do some technical climbing to get up to this cave. So, you know, in goes the ropes, all the climbing gear, climbing boots. We decide that, you know, we share the common gear. I decided to take the rope, ended up creating a 40-pound pack for myself for the day. We make our way up to Cirque Lake, easy going, but then we have to blaze a trail across Cirque Lake. And then we get to a point where we're at the end of Cirque Lake, we look up, and there's avalanches falling all around from the top of the mountain. So we sit there and we monitor and watch the avalanches to see what their behavior was. After about 10 minutes, we determined that they're not even coming remotely close to the cave. And so we proceed on, but we go with caution in that we separate, right? In case one of us, for some bizarre reason, actually gets caught. So we make it up to the point where we're past the avalanche hazard. My buddy Chris passes me and goes up and helps, because now we're going up this massive steep slope in snowshoes in waist deep snow. And so he goes past me to help blaze the trail because he's in way better shape than I am. And at one point I get to the point where I'm trying to make a step up so that I can step up and move on. 10 minutes of this. It would break every time I would step on it. Well, I am not the most patient guy in the world. And when I get impatient, the least friendly words come out of my mouth. So I am ranting and raving. Chris thinks it's funny that to try to wind me up even more, he starts throwing snowballs at me. I have no idea this is going on. I have no idea. All I'm focusing on is trying to get myself up. His girlfriend, Lizzie, decides it would even be funnier to video this. So there's Chris throwing snowballs at me. I didn't even find this out until we got up and out of the cave and down again. And I'm standing on the lake, at the bottom of the lake, and they decide to tell me this. The only reaction I could do is laugh. Laugh so loud that it would reverberate through the valley. But anyway, we finally make it into the cave, and the effort to get in there was so worth it, because how could you argue with a massive ice wall, a massive rock wall, and a frozen waterfall in one ice cave? Like, that is the trifecta of ice caves, right? So awesome. This, however, had a lot of that ice in the bottom there, a lot of fresh ice falling, so we had to be very cautious and quickly get in and out. So we did that. I wanted to capture the story of Trifecta. The only way I could do it again is lay down and look up with a wide angle lens and get kind of a funky perspective. And that's exactly what I did to get the Trifecta. Now we move on across the world into Bhutan. To orient yourself, if you're not familiar with where Bhutan is, in the Himalayas. It's bordered by China and India. And so on a 7-day trek in Bhutan, and a guided trip, a group of us. So morning 3, it's our acclimatization day. So we're at 4,000 meters above sea level. We want to spend the day. The biggest objective for this day was to hike up the valley to the base of Jolamahari mountain, which is in the background there, and take a few photos and hike back, and then camp down lower again. So I wake up. We have our morning tea in bed. The guides would give us morning tea in bed. So I wake up, I get my morning tea, I come out, I stick my head out of the tent, and this wonderful scene on Jolamahari is unfolding with a low cloud. I grab my gear, I run out, and I'm trying to capture it, and this damn power line's getting in the way. But then the birds start landing on it. I'm like, well, why not incorporate them, right? And so there is a crow sitting on the wire, so that's my bird on the wire shot. Advance forward, day 5. Our highest camp level was 4,400 meters. The camp actually is just past that lake there. And this is the big day. We're headed up to 4,900 meters, the pass. So I wake up with lots of excitement, but the nerves are on fire. They're going off the charts because I have no idea how my body is going to react at 4,900 meters. It's supposed to be cold. So with the nerves going off my head, I, to this day, still don't know why I did this. I threw on a bunch of layers. It was only, me and overheating, right? So it's not far up the lane. I decided I have to strip and take a layer off, a bottom layer. Not quite the bottom layer. Fortunately, there was still a layer over me. So as people saw me stripping, they did not get a full show, right? So I stripped down, and then I met up everybody at this viewpoint. And that Jolamahari is the peak to the left, and Jitsu Drake is the one to the right. They're both well over 7,000 meters. We're at 4,500 meters. So there's at least another 2,500, well over 2,600 meters to go, well into the clouds. To put that in perspective, Castle Mountain is roughly that height. It's just a bit higher than that. You know, the big flat mountain you drive on your way to see Lake. That, from sea level to the top, is that height. So there's a whole nother mountain there. So, you know, I always knew the Himalayas were high, but to see it, and you're at 4,400 meters, 4,500 meters, and you spend 2 days in the valley hiking, you realize that our Rockies are just hills, right, compared to the Himalayas. So we make it to the summit, and I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but this is a summit. It's a complete whiteout. So in 2021, I decided to sign up for Bhutan. And 22 months later, I finally make it up to the top. You know, I don't want to mention that word, but that word happened, right? And prevented us from going. But 22 months later, I finally make it to the top with tremendous amount of excitement, but also quite a bit of concern. A participant got altitude sickness just as she was, just before she summited. Fortunately, the guides were very well versed in this, grabbed this person, took the person down, and fortunately later that night, when they got down to camp, she had a good rest and was able to overcome it. A guide on the same day also got altitude sickness and turned around and went back. So it's a lot of fun doing this stuff, but we got to make sure we take safety of the utmost important. But anyways, enough of my safety moment. A friend of mine, or a guy I met on the hike, and I actually, you know, 4,900 meters sounds cool. Wouldn't 5,000 meters sound even better? Right? So all the way up, we're going to find 100 meters that we could, easy route to scramble up. Well, when we get up to this conditions, no way. I have no desire to walk off a cliff because I don't know that area. So we put that aside, and instead we stood where everybody crested, gave everybody high fives, hugs to make it, and then we made our way down. That's my buddy Paul, just to put things in perspective. That's a cliff with a big cornice. So you walk to the edge of the dirt where you can see dirt, and just to provide perspective, that's how much of a whiteout it was at the top. Okay, that's enough of adventures. We'll go back here. A few tips. So I love black and white photography. I've got some cards that I'll hand out to sorry people online, they're in-person cards only. With this, I put this together. This is what I think great characteristics of a black and white photo. You don't need all of these, but you need several of them. You need a few of them. And the one that I want to emphasize the most is tonal contrast. You don't need it in all shots, but tonality is extremely important. And I firmly believe that the editing process and the field process is commingled 50-50, right? Like, I'd argue it's more important in black and white photography than it is in color. People may disagree, but the importance of editing is this photo, which I took in the field, and then after the editing process, to get the tonality and look and feel that you want. To take the right amount of edit time. Print, print, print. Like, I can't emphasize this enough. Every time I go to my printer, I give them a hug, right? Because it brings images to life. We live in a digital world where we have 85-inch screens. There's not a screen, I dare you to find a screen in this world that can bring an image to life like a print can. And most of all, we're all out there wanting to get the most epic shot, but remember, have fun, right? That's an image from Greenland, that's an image from Namibia. They're not award-winning images, but they're some of my images that bring back the fondest memories. That's me trying to do my John Travolta imitation. And then Paul jumps in and decides, like in the middle of the frame, like complete surprise, jumps in and does his pose. And that's me just giving the Milky Way a hug because it was awesome. Just have some fun. Take some fun images. They don't all have to be epic, award-winning images. Okay, short presentation. There's a lot of images with peaks in there, but my passion in the Rockies is finding those intimate scenes that showcase the beauty and majesty of the mountains below a peak. So I've created a number of sub-chapters of that, and this celebrates that.
Yeah, for a guy who likes black and white images so much, that was a really colorful presentation. So well done. You had mentioned, we got a question online. You mentioned you love going through your long lens. What lens is that you're grabbing all the time?
Nowadays, it's my 1-500.
Yeah.
Canon 1-500 lens. I do, for those really, really big days like Mount Athabasca, I do carry the Canon, what they call the PopCat lens, the 70-200 f4.
Yep.
Because it's so compact and light, and yet I can still get out there.
Yeah, no, and when you're doing these adventures, I mean, you're going some pretty extreme places. How much gear do you pack? I mean, how much do you need to, have like safety gear and
So
food and everything else, and one skate?
And so it and one skate. Well, it depends. So if it's a car adventure, the whole thing, including the kitchen sink, go in, right? If it's Mount Athabasca, it's a camera and a lens, right? And maybe a filter and a battery, right? And everything else in between. And when I pack for what is the adventure. So it's all the, if it's a summit, a glacier, whatever, all the safety gear, all that, and the technical gear go into the pack first. Layers, food, water, all that go in second. And then it's whatever I feel, how ambitious I feel, goes in the camera gear. It's always the last to go in because I want to make sure, like if you're not having fun, I'm not going to get great images, and I'm not having fun if I don't feel I'm safe.
Yeah. Now, do you ever bring a friend along who's less of a photographer and more of a Sherpa for you?
It's a great idea. I need to employ that.
All right. Do you have any questions here in the audience here?
Do you do anything special to keep your gear from icing up? Because you're pretty extreme.
The only thing that I need to protect is the battery. In a cold day like that, -25, I carry the batteries inside my pocket. The gear today is built strong enough to endure all that stuff.
Okay. So what's your longest hike or your most toughest hike, most rewarding hike? Or is it all one and the same?
Well, that can all be different, right? The toughest one I'd have to say was that 100-kilometer-hour wind, right? That was pretty tough, more so mentally.
Really?
Right. Well, you have 100-kilometer-hour winds blowing in your face for like hours on end. It can be mentally challenging.
Interesting.
Right. Physically, I would have to say that 7-day trek in Bhutan was, I had a respiratory infection as well. So it started on the day of the trip. So, actually, it was the biggest issue there was sleeping. Right. Every time I'd lay down, I'd start hacking and coughing. To the point where I would set up my tent at the farthest possible point so that I didn't have to keep everybody else awake. And they were good drug dealers too, because they provided me all sorts of medication to keep me healthy.
Now, you've been shooting for a long time. You've obviously you're probably in a dark room for a long time as well.
Actually,
no, really.
No, actually,
because your black and white tells me different.
So when I shot film, I shot point and shoot. And it would always get them developed by an outside developer, and it was always for the fun of it. It was never for the artistic side of photography. I only got into the art side of photography in 2015, and it was digital by then. So
interesting. So you graduated. You were different systems, but now you've moved into mirrorless cameras, right? You're a full-on Canon. How has that transition been for you? Switching from like a brownie from way back when, right?
I had a Nikon system before, and I thought I would have to I switched from PC to Mac, and that was a hellish transition. And for that reason, I'll never go back. And I thought it was going to be similar, but it's been not too bad. And I think both systems are very, very good systems. I went to Canon simply because 95% of the people I hang out with shoot Canon, and when you're going on big days, being able to share lenses and batteries and accessories is extremely helpful.
Well, you mentioned like the sort of the buddy hike, right? Sort of going out, meeting for a buddy, and going for a walk, and I think we sort of miss that sense of community. And it's more than just getting that shot, but it's what's behind the shot as well.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, it's been great listening to your stories today and everything like that. We're going to cut the live feed here shortly, so I want to appreciate everybody who was paying attention to our online. We've had a great time. Hope you got a good presentation and learned a few things, and certainly some great stories here as well. Make sure you follow us online at thecamerastore.com and check out our YouTube channel as well. But from then, we'll check out and we'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks, everyone. Great to see you online.
All right.